Hey guys, tonight we're headed deep into the Persian desert, where the sun's heat could fry your sandals by noon, but where ancient engineers somehow managed to create ice. Yes, actual solid, soothing ice in a place so hot, your dreams would sweat. You blink awake to the shimmer of heat on the horizon and the scent of baked earth. There's no air conditioning, no fridge humming in the background. And yet somewhere beneath layers of sun-scorched clay, ice waits. You probably won't survive this world without sunburn or confusion, but you'll love every chilled second of it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake just before dawn in the Achaemenid Empire, somewhere near the edge of what we now call Yazd. The air still holds a hint of coolness, but not for long. A caravan is rustling to life nearby. The smell of wool dust and bread baked days ago wafts through the alleys. Your sandals crunch over sun-baked bricks as you follow a servant through winding streets. She tells you something about Yakchal, a word that sounds both rough and soft, like wind over snow, if you can imagine such a thing out here. As you walk, you notice something towering on the edge of town. It's like a giant cone rising from the sand. A smooth mud plaster surface shines faintly in the golden light. That the servant says is where we make winter live longer. You're still waking up, but even half asleep, you're intrigued. Inside, the air is different. Thick, cool, almost whispering. You blink again. This isn't sorcery. It's geometry and survival. You step back out into the rising sun, but the coolness of the Yakchal still lingers on your skin like a borrowed breeze from another season. It's oddly comforting. The servant nods for you to follow again this time, toward the heart of the city, where dawn spills light across whitewashed walls and copper shop signs. This is where your new day in ancient Persia begins, bustling, smoky, and humming with slow purpose. Everywhere around you, the architecture feels intentional. Mud brick walls rise thick and tall with narrow windows and high parapets. They aren't just for privacy, they're part of the plan. A plan to survive the heat, of course. Every building feels like it's in on a quiet joke about the sun shrugging off its fury with clever angles and tricks of airflow. You walk past domed roofs and stepped courtyards, their layouts designed not by whim, but by thermal logic. Children run between water channels etched into the ground. These narrow gullies, qanats, aren't just for decoration. They're part of the empire's vast water network carved through stone and desert soil to ferry precious groundwater from mountain aquifers to the cities. The flow is gentle, constant, and utterly brilliant. You pause for a moment and dip your fingers into the water. It's cold. Not cool for the desert cold, actually cold. And in that moment, the genius of Persian hydrology clicks into place. You hear someone call out, in Old Persian. Something like, "Careful of the threshold." You look down. The doorway into the next building isn't flat. It dips, then rises. Not a design flaw. It's there to keep hot air from rushing in like a hound when doors swing open. Inside this home, you meet a young artisan preparing a wall of clay with a slurry of straw and earth. She pats it with rhythmic smacks, creating a textured surface that helps regulate airflow and humidity. The walls feel alive, breathing slowly, inhaling warmth and exhaling calm. This isn't just a home, it's a cooling engine. The way rooms are positioned, the thickness of walls, even the placement of plants, it all works together to create a pocket of comfort. There's no fan, no breeze yet. Somehow you feel a shiver when you step into the darkest corner. The artisan offers you a lump of damp clay to touch. It's cool to the touch again. You're starting to think they've figured something out we've long forgotten. Historians still argue whether these buildings were originally designed with precise thermodynamics in mind, or whether they were simply the result of centuries of intuition trial and generational knowledge. Either way, the effect is the same. Walking through this city feels like moving between carefully tuned microclimates. Outside, the day is starting to simmer. Vendors fan themselves with palm fronds. An elderly woman balances a wide dish of dates on her head, their sticky sweetness already sweating in the sun. The servant points up at a tall structure with narrow slits. "Wind catcher," she says. "Badjir. You'll learn more about those soon." But for now, you follow her toward the western quarter of the city, where larger homes hide shaded courtyards. You'll be meeting someone who builds the very heart of this desert cooling magic. And you still can't get over the fact that somewhere beneath all this heat, ice quietly sleeps. The scent of wet clay follows you into the builder's quarter, where wide-hipped carts and low voices mark the start of another slow day. The servant leads you to a half-built structure, its base already formed in a shallow pit with stacks of straw and clay bricks, rising beside it like edible stairs. This is no ordinary building. This is the start of a yakshal. Your guide introduces you to a master builder who greets you with a dusty nod. He's older than the hills that brought the ice with palms like cracked pottery. You kneel beside him as he sifts handfuls of straw through damp earth, muttering about ratios, too. Handfuls of straw, 4 scoops of clay, a splash of salt water. It's not a recipe so much as an instinct honed from generations of trial and error. As the walls grow, you notice their tapering curve. Not straight, not round, but something else, something mathematical. These aren't random shapes. They're inverted cones. Their angles calculated, yes, calculated to minimize heat gain and maximize interior airflow. The structure breathes. Hot air rises and escapes through a top vent, while cooler air lingers below like a cat refusing to move. Historians still debate just how much math went into these builds. Some argue that it was all empirical, passed down orally with chants and songs. Others suggest scribes and architects actually calculated gradients and airflow resistance, creating an ancient form of desert thermodynamics. The walls thicken with layer after layer of mud plaster, each allowed to dry before the next is applied. You help briefly until your arms ache and your hands blister. The work is slow, patient. Cooling, it seems, demands not just clever design, but also endurance. Then comes the liner. The builder pours a smooth layer of a special plaster, a mix of the sand ash, goat hair, and lime. It smells odd, but strong, like a potion meant to last forever. This coating helps the structure resist not just water, but time itself. Some of these ancient yakchals have stood for over 2,000 years, defying both desert and neglect. You crouch inside the growing dome. It's still open to the sky, but already the temperature inside is several degrees cooler than outside. A breeze trickles in from the foundation channel, an underground tunnel known as a kanat, where water evaporates gently, cooling the chamber, even before the ice arrives. The builder claps his hands to shake off the dust and motions for you to look up. Imagine, he says, this cone full of ice in summer. You try. And suddenly, it makes sense. The cone's shape isn't just aesthetic, it's a climate strategy. The base stores the ice. The cone shape traps cool air. Gravity and airflow do the rest. There's still much to be done. The top must be sealed, the vents calibrated, and the inside polished smooth. But already, the bones are in place, and you're starting to feel a creeping appreciation for the genius of it all. As you leave, another worker waves a woven fan to cool her face, laughing as she points to your clay-covered tunic. You've joined a tradition older than the empire itself, and somewhere behind you, the future refrigerator quietly grows brick by patient brick. The sun now stands tall in the Persian sky, and even the shadows are squinting. You retreat indoors toward a shaded courtyard where bowls of fruit and cool water sit beneath a linen canopy. It's here that you learn just how precious ice has become in this desert empire, and just how fashionable. A noble family is preparing for a midday gathering, the kind where no one arrives on time but everyone comes hungry. Servants bustle about arranging plates, cooling clay pitchers, and unwrapping bundles with almost comical care. You're handed a small dish, some sort of soft melon sliced, and served over a chunk of ice that hisses slightly as it melts. The effect is immediate, sweet, clean, and impossibly cold. It's a luxury you didn't know you missed. You overhear a guest boasting that her husband had 3 ice deliveries last week. Another whispers about a banquet in Persepolis where sherbets were served with rose petals and actual snow. The idea that something so fleeting and simple could become a symbol of status isn't entirely foreign to you. We still do it today, just with fewer camels and more Instagram filters. Historians often note that ice in ancient Persia was more than just a novelty. It was a sign of empire. Transporting it required infrastructure labor and the right weather conditions, and for the elite, flaunting their access to it was as much about showing off connections as wealth. If your party had ice, you weren't just rich, you were powerful. At one end of the courtyard, a group gathers around a servant pouring syrup over crushed ice. It's thick, sweet, and flavored with herbs you can't name, but wouldn't mind tasting again. The texture is somewhere between slush and snowball. A man leans in and tells you half-joking that this is the taste of kings. He's not far off. It's one of the early precursors to falude, a chilled Persian dessert still beloved today. Then comes a quiet moment. The host, a woman with silver-threaded hair and a gaze sharp as a scimitar, raises a cup of iced rosewater and simply says, "We trap the season before it escapes." You're not sure if it's poetry or practicality, but either way, you nod. You help carry dishes into a shaded pantry where baskets of herbs hang from the ceiling and clay jars line the walls. Inside, it's cooler than outside by at least 10 degrees. The combination of thick walls, high ceilings, and damp cloths creates a passive refrigeration system before the invention of even a single copper pipe. There's an awkward pause when someone asks whether you have one of these at your home. You pretend to cough and change the subject. But before you leave, someone hands you a small bundle of dates packed in cold leaves. A souvenir of luxury wrapped in ingenuity. And maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to understand that the Persian obsession with ice wasn't frivolous. It was revolutionary. Night has fallen over the desert, and the stars blink like they've just remembered how. The heat of the day dissipates slowly, replaced by a crispness that makes your teeth chatter slightly. You pull your cloak tighter and follow a different path. This one out of the city walls, toward the edge of the nearby plateau. That's where the harvesters wait. You didn't expect a desert to have an ice harvesting season, but here it is. From late autumn through the coldest winter months, when desert nights dip below freezing workers, flood shallow pools outside the city. These pools, rectangular stone-lined and positioned to avoid direct sun, are designed to freeze just a few inches of water at a time. And when they do, The workers move fast. You meet them just as they begin their night shift. They joke, sing softly, and keep time with their tools, flat wooden paddles and curved blades for slicing thin layers of ice. You join them, stepping carefully across the dark earth. "It's colder than you thought possible." One man grins and offers you a turn. You try. It's harder than it looks, and your hands are numb within minutes. As the ice is cut, it's packed into baskets and carried sometimes for miles to the Yakchal. The caravan is slow, deliberate. Camels groan softly under the weight, their breath curling into the night like soft clouds. You help load one of the baskets and follow the line of torchlight up a winding path. Historians still argue whether these harvests were communal efforts organized by local officials or entirely private enterprises managed by wealthy families. Evidence suggests a mix. Some ice went to the public good, while the best batches were pre-ordered by aristocrats in palace kitchens. Once at the Yakchal, the ice is lowered by rope into the dark cone you visited days ago. It stacks in careful layers, sometimes insulated with straw or even ash. You watch your own tiny slab vanish into the shadows and realize that your contribution might cool someone's sherbet a month from now. Someone tells you that in particularly hot years, blocks were brought down from mountain snowfields wrapped in canvas and rushed along ancient roads at night. That's when the real urgency kicked in. Ice melts. Time matters. Every sliver counts. As dawn approaches, the last basket is emptied, and the workers gather near a small fire. They pass around cups of warm milk and flatbread, chewing in contented silence. One of them, a teenager not much older than you, grins and says, "In summer, they'll thank us. But now, we freeze." And just like that, it's time to head back. You walk slowly, your breath puffing in time with your thoughts, and try to wrap your mind around what you've just seen. A system of cold born entirely from patience, mud, and night. You're starting to understand in Persia, even the frost is by design. It's noon again, and the desert is back to doing what it does best, reminding you that shadows are a privilege. You find yourself in a shaded workshop, tucked behind a line of tall poplar trees, their leaves rattling like a sleepy percussion section. This place doesn't look like much from the outside. But inside, things are about to get salty. The workshop master welcomes you with a crooked smile and a bowl of something coarse granules the color of dry earth. "Salt," he says, holding it out like an offering. Not just any salt. This batch comes from a dried lake bed far to the south, where wind and evaporation work together to leave behind shimmering plains of crystals. You're here because you've heard a strange claim that salt was once used not just to preserve food, but to preserve ice. It sounds counterintuitive, right? Salt and ice don't exactly cuddle well in modern kitchens. But in ancient Persia, theories abounded. Some believed that packing harvested ice in layers of straw and salt could extend its lifespan. Others swore that salt only accelerated melting, and that it was instead used around the Yakchal to repel pests or maintain dryness. Historians still debate this one fiercely. There's not a lot of physical evidence, but plenty of local lore and poetic metaphors about white, guarding white. The master shrugs. "My grandfather said salt slows the summer." Then he dumps a handful into a clay jar and seals it. Science or superstition. Either way, you're intrigued. You help stir a mixture of ash lime and salt, an odd blend used to coat the inside of storage jars and sometimes the floor of the Yakshal itself. The scent is sharp like old vinegar and dry lightning. It clings to your clothes in a way that makes your nose wrinkle. Later, in the adjacent storage room, you see rows of containers labeled with symbols you don't recognize. The servant with you whispers, "These are for sherbet," and taps one with her toe. Inside, snow-white powder. You dip a finger in. It's not sugar, it's crushed salt mixed with dried herbs. kind of preservative seasoning. As the afternoon passes, the workshop fills with the quiet rhythm of preparation. You grind poor seal. There's something calming about the repetition, about knowing that all of this, even the smallest grain of salt, plays its part in preserving what little cold the desert can cling to. One man speaks of a mountain temple where salt was once offered alongside ice as a gift to the gods of wind. Another shares a local myth: if you sprinkle salt in your yakshal on the first full moon of summer, the ice will never melt fully until the leaves fall. Nonsense. Maybe, but somehow it sticks in your mind. You leave the workshop just as the sun begins to shift toward late afternoon. Your hands are dry, your throat salty, and your head full of riddles. Maybe salt does slow the summer, or maybe the desert just lets you believe that long enough to get through another scorcher. Either way, the ice is still there somehow, and that you decide is magic enough. You return to the city with a slight crunch in your step, Salt, clinging to your sandals, whispering like sandpaper. The late afternoon sun is merciless, but your guide insists there's something you absolutely must see the Badjir. From a distance, it looks like a strange tower rising from a flat rooftop, tall, narrow slits along its sides, almost like a chimney that couldn't commit. But up close, the brilliance becomes obvious. This is ancient Persia's answer to air conditioning the wind catcher. The guide explains as you climb onto a shaded terrace. The Badjir, she says, catches the wind, cools the rooms, and calms the house. It sounds like poetry. It is poetry, but it's also physics. Wind enters the slits of the tower and flows downward, driven by pressure differences and clever construction. Sometimes the air hits water pools or damp surfaces below, causing evaporation, and voila, cooler air spreads through the rooms. Other times, the Badjir is used in tandem with underground qanats to pull up chilled air from the earth's belly. You enter a home fitted with one of these towers, and the difference is immediate. Outside, sun-baked silence. Inside, a soft, steady whisper of cool air that brushes your skin like a secret. No fan, no electricity, just ancient wisdom channeled through bricks and breeze. A boy leads you to the central hall where fabric curtains billow gently, even though no windows are open. The effect is hypnotic, like the house itself is breathing slowly, keeping rhythm with the day. Historians still puzzle over how consistent these cooling effects were. Some argue the towers were symbolic as much as functional. Others claim that with the right orientation and design, Badjirs could reduce indoor temperatures by up to 15 degrees Celsius. Modern reconstructions have tried and occasionally failed to match what the ancients pulled off without a single thermostat. At the base of the tower, you find a sleeping dog curled beside a shallow pool. The water reflects the ceiling's curves, and you notice never seems to ripple. This is by design. Less surface agitation means more effective cooling. Even the silence is strategic. Later, you visit a merchant's house with a triple Badjir setup, one for each wing of the house. In summer, he says with a smirk, we live like mountaintop kings. He offers you a cup of cold mint tea, and you believe him. You sketch the layout in your mind: tower slits, internal shafts, central hall, and underfloor channels. It's a symphony of air and space, and suddenly your own apartment back home feels clumsy. As you lie on a cushion beneath one of the vents, you close your eyes and try to imagine the sound of wind being welcomed home. It's not loud, not even clear, but it's there, constant and kind. That night, when the desert temperature drops once again, you realize the Badjir doesn't just catch the wind. It listens to it, shapes it, and turns it into shelter. It's market day and the square pulses with color and clamor. You follow the scent of saffron and grilled lamb weaving through a parade of fabrics, copper pots, and sweet dates rolled in sesame. But your goal today isn't food, it's dessert. Specifically the kind that melts. A small alley leads you to a shaded stall with long marble counters and a bubbling copper pot. A young vendor barely taller than his jars of syrup greets you with a grin. "Sherbet," he asks, and you nod before you even know what that means. In Persia, sherbet isn't the creamy scoop you might expect. It's a chilled drink, sometimes thick, sometimes thin, made with fruit syrups, herbs, rosewater, and spices. And in this sun-scorched land, it's a revelation, especially when served over shaved ice. You watch the vendor scoop what looks like snow into a tall clay cup. He pours in syrup from a pot that's been cooling in a basin of salted water, then adds basil seeds that float like jellyfish. He hands it over, and your first sip is like drinking a garden at dawn. You're not the only one enjoying this miracle. Around the square, nobles and commoners alike nurse similar concoctions. Some even carry portable clay flasks kept cool by wrapping them in soaked cloth. You spot a group of musicians passing around a honeyed version, between songs, their fingers sticky and their laughter loose. One older woman dips thin slices of cucumber into her drink. Another adds a pinch of ground cardamom from a pouch at her waist. Every family has their own mix, she tells you. My mother used to add pomegranate and vinegar. Historians trace these early sherbets to both medicinal and ceremonial roots. Some recipes were prescribed to cool the body, others to cleanse it. Court physicians even developed seasonal sherbets to balance the humors. And yes, debates still rage over whether certain combinations actually helped or just tasted nice. You duck into a shaded garden where young servants are slicing fruit into bowls. A boy arrives carrying a sealed jar from the yakshal, its exterior beaded with condensation. Inside, pre-frozen syrup cubes. The modern world thinks it invented popsicles, but Persia may have had them beat. By the koi pond, a scholar in faded robes offers you a more philosophical take. Cold things remind us of the fleeting, he says. They melt. They pass. But in their passing, we taste them best. You're not sure if that's wisdom or just a poetic way to justify having thirds. You linger longer than intended, sipping the last of your sherbet, as the sun dips toward the horizon. The cup is empty, but your tongue still tingles with mint and memory. And once again, you're struck by the same thought. This isn't just refreshment. It's a system. A ritual, a kind of edible engineering powered by mud domes and midnight labor. You drop a coin into the vendor's bowl, thank him, and turn back toward the street. Somewhere behind you, another block of ice hisses into syrup. The morning sun hasn't yet cracked the edge of the rooftops when you find yourself among caravans preparing for travel. The smell of oiled leather and dried figs fills the air as camels grunt and shift under early loads. You're about to join a special delivery ice packed and precious bound for a faraway palace. The caravan leader is a wiry man with a green sash and a no-nonsense expression. He explains that transporting ice through the desert is part precision, part gamble. You raise an eyebrow. He laughs. Mostly gamble, he admits, tying a bundle of damp wool around a clay-insulated crate. Each block of ice is carefully wrapped in layers, first straw, then cloth, soaked in brine, then a double-layered basket. These bundles are then packed into larger crates and sealed with a paste made of ash and mud. Every crack matters. A single leak, a single shift in weight, and the block could melt to nothing within hours. You mount a camel not gracefully and fall into rhythm with the procession. It's slow going. The desert doesn't hurry, and neither do those who try to survive it. At intervals, the caravan pauses beneath stone arches or shaded ridges. Water skins are passed around. The ice is checked. Everyone speaks in quiet tones, as if loud voices might startle the temperature into rising. You sip from a skin and taste something. Cool. Yes, cool. Someone has added chilled grape water siphoned from one of the smaller crates. It's like a secret handshake with nature. You pass small villages where children chase the caravan, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ice or sneak a taste. One boy manages to snag a single chip of it, laughing as he holds it aloft like a diamond. For my sister, he shouts before dashing home barefoot. Historians note that ice deliveries weren't just logistical feats, they were acts of prestige. A ruler's ability to summon winter into summer was a flex of empire-wide power. These frozen gifts became diplomatic tools, wedding offerings, and symbols of control over nature itself. The road grows narrower as you approach the palace grounds. Date palms give way to elaborate gardens and tiled fountains. A herald runs ahead, and by the time you arrive, servants are already preparing shaded storage. The final crate is lifted down with ceremony. A scribe records the exact weight. Another sniffs the straw for spoilage. It feels like witnessing a sacred rite. One servant claps with joy when the seal is unbroken. Still whole, she murmurs. Still cold. And just like that, the ice is gone, spirited into a royal kitchen, where it will cool plum syrups and fig creams before the evening's banquet. You sit beneath a tree and watch the camels rest. One of them eyes you as if to ask whether it was all worth it. You think of the boy, the grape water, the palace cheer, and nod. In Persia, even cargo sweats with purpose. It's a slow afternoon in the city archives, a dusty, humming chamber where scrolls sleep in clay cubbies, and the only noise is the soft brushing of parchment. You've come looking for answers, but what you find, instead, are receipts. Dozens of them. The scribe greets you with ink-stained fingers and a suspiciously amused look. Looking for tales of love and conquest, he asks. You shake your head. Ice taxes, you reply. He blinks, then grins. Ah, the real drama. You're handed a collection of bamboo slips and leather-bound ledgers, each etched with lines of old Persian script. They contain inventories from temples, estates, and royal storehouses, each noting quantities of harvested ice delivery routes, and crucially, the assessed value of each shipment. Here's the twist: in several provinces, cold air, or rather the right to access cold storage, was taxable property. You sit cross-legged as the scribe translates a sample. 2 baskets of ice, one ode to the temple, one to the satrap. Another reads, 3 drachmas for Yakshal access during harvest season. You look up. So people paid for cold. He nods. And the smart ones made a business of it. Some enterprising citizens built small-scale ice vaults and rented space by the season. Others sold ice in slivers weighed on brass scales like cinnamon or saffron. And as demand grew, so did regulation. One scroll details a dispute where a merchant was fined for selling meltwater as fresh snow. Fraud, it turns out, is eternal. Historians debate whether these taxes were officially sanctioned, or more of a local racket run by bureaucrats with particularly warm homes. Some records suggest central oversight. Others hint at independent agreements among guilds. Either way, the paper trail is undeniable. You flip through a ledger showing rates fluctuating based on weather patterns. In cooler years, ice was cheaper. In drought years, worth its weight in silver. One royal edict even capped prices during a heat wave to preserve public dignity, which you suspect is code for nobody wants to see nobles sweating in public. You pause at a final page scribbled hastily and stained with oil. It reads 3 coins withheld. Ice lost in transit. Seller claims camel was cursed. You look at the scribe. He just shrugs. Accounting has always required imagination. As you leave, he presses a copy of the records into your hands. Take it, he says. For the next time someone tells you history is boring. Back on the street, you pass a vendor hawking chilled rosewater in tiny glass vials. The price, 2 coins. You glance at your scroll and smile. In Persia, even cold had a cost, and someone always kept the receipt. You wake to the clatter of hooves and the unmistakable sound of Greek voices echoing off Persian stone. The air feels tense, like it's holding its breath. You've stumbled into history again, this time during the invasion of Alexander the Great. Your guide leads you to a walled compound where Greek officers, dusty and bewildered, are being shown around by Persian officials. They marvel at the gardens, the canals, the endless bowls of fruit. But what stops them cold, literally, is the yakchal. One Greek soldier presses his hand to the dome's cool clay and recoils with a startled laugh. Another dips a cloth in the chilled water basin and wrings it out over his neck. It's like snow in summer, he mutters. The official leading them gestures proudly. Our ice house, he says. A gift from winter. You watch as the visitors circle it like wary animals around fire, curious, impressed, a little bit jealous. Alexander himself is rumored to have seen one of these structures. Some accounts say he thought it sorcery. Others claim he wanted to import the idea back to Macedonia. The desert teaches strange wisdom, he reportedly said, though no one can confirm if he was talking about architecture or philosophy. Historians still argue over how much of Persian technology Alexander truly admired or stole. Some scholars suggest the Greeks adapted wind catcher concepts into later bathhouse ventilation. Others claim it was the Persians who kept most of their secrets hidden even under occupation. You wander among the ruins of the compound after the delegation departs. A boy tells you stories of Greeks begging for chilled wine, of an officer offering his ring for a handful of ice. Another tale, dubious but delightful, claims a soldier tried to carry a frozen melon all the way back to Athens. It melted before they crossed the Zagros Mountains. Back in town, you hear whispers of locals mocking the Greeks' amazement. They conquer with fire, one man snorts, but melt before our ice. It's a good line, probably apocryphal, still satisfying. You pass an old tablet scratched with both Greek and Persian script. The message, a trade record. 4 jars of snow syrup exchanged for 10 bolts of cloth. A fusion of tastes, literal and cultural. And as the sun dips low, you sit beside the yakchal, wondering how many times in history someone mistook good engineering for magic. You decide it happens more often than we admit. You spend the afternoon in the company of builders again, this time not at a bustling construction site, but within a quiet, crumbling ruin at the edge of town. Here, under flaking plaster and half-buried bricks, the mysteries of the yakchal's internal genius begin to unravel. You crouch beside a gaping hole in the side of one such structure. The walls, once smooth and imposing, are now chipped and softened by time. And yet the interior still feels cooler than outside. You place your hand on the clay, still breathing even after centuries. A young apprentice named Navid joins you with a small lantern and a satchel of tools. You want to see the real secret. He grins. He points to the layers of mud plaster along the inner wall. You see alternating colors. Light, dark, light again. Ash lime, clay goat hair, he says, tapping each layer. Each has a job. You trace the lines with your fingers. The darker layers absorb warmth, while the lighter ones reflect it. The goat hair added for flexibility and strength. Navid tells you this combination is called sarouj, and it's more than just protective. It's part of the thermal equation. Historians still wonder how precise this layering was. Did ancient engineers test different ratios? Did they record findings? Or was it all passed through the mouths and hands of apprentices like Navid? Some argue the materials varied by region, climate, and even by political era. Others believe there was a master formula jealously guarded and selectively shared. Navid unrolls a scroll filled with sketches, cross-sections of yakchals, airflow diagrams, thermal gradient estimates. My grandfather drew these, he says, but they match ones found near Shiraz. Same slope, same vent. You begin to notice something else, the geometry. The cone isn't just for aesthetic or stability. Its shape minimizes surface area at the top where the heat is and maximizes storage at the base where the cold settles. Hot air rises and escapes. Cool air stays trapped. It's like living inside an equation. One diagram shows a vent connected to a subterranean water channel designed to encourage evaporation and enhance cooling. You ask Navid how they knew where to place it. He shrugs. They listened, watched the wind, dropped feathers and smoke. The simplicity of the tools hides the sophistication of the design. A wisp of incense shows you the airflow in action. It curves, dances, then flows down a visual whisper of genius. You sit on a stone bench near the opening, letting your thoughts settle like the dust in the air. This wasn't just a refrigerator. It was an organism. A structure with lungs and memory designed to work with nature, not against it. Navid pats the wall and says, "Still works." He grins. "Better than our school's air vent." You laugh. Because of course it does. The city is quiet today, hushed in that particular way that only accompanies politics. You find yourself summoned, well gently invited to the Hall of Records, where scrolls and tablets tell stories of more than just taxes and storage. A soft-spoken clerk ushers you into a side room where a few elders sit around a map painted directly onto a stone table. At first glance, it looks like a layout of irrigation canals or market stalls. But no, it's a network of yakchals. Dotted lines stretch between cities with symbols indicating access ownership and something called ice rights. You raise an eyebrow, like water rights. One elder nods. Exactly, only colder. In times of political tension, famine, heat waves, or succession disputes, ice became more than a luxury. It became leverage. If one city controlled access to the ice houses, it could dictate not just dessert, but diplomacy. A cold favor, if you will. You're shown a scroll from the reign of Artaxerxes II. It describes a temporary embargo on ice shipments to rebellious provinces. The justification, excessive spoilage risk. The real message, behave or sweat it out. Historians debate whether these restrictions were truly effective. Some argue the impact was symbolic, a show of control over nature itself. Others point to written appeals from outlying governors begging for restored access to the yakshal network, especially during droughts. One case stands out, a satrap who built a private yakchal without royal permission. He claimed it was for local use only. Records show he was fined, then quietly promoted 2 years later. Politics, it seems, is also very good at melting. In another corner of the hall, you study seals and insignias once used to mark ice shipments. Some bore the names of noble houses. Others had cryptic symbols, flowers, birds, even one shaped like a half-melted sun. A clerk explains these acted as guarantees of weight and freshness. Ice fraud again was no small matter. The clerk also tells you of a time when a peace treaty between two mountain clans was sealed with a symbolic gift of 10 nights of ice. It wasn't about the cubes, it was about trust, and the effort it took to keep them frozen long enough to arrive. You close your eyes for a moment and picture that two enemy leaders sitting around a table sweating in the desert heat, sipping cold rose water and pretending not to be impressed. Ice in ancient Persia wasn't just preservation, it was power. Cold in the hand of the right person could cool tempers, seal pacts, or silence protests. And sometimes that power was exercised not with armies, but with a block of frozen water carried in silence across a border. The sun climbs again, and with it the scent of baked stone and sun-warmed figs. You find yourself wandering near the oldest part of town, where a half-buried dome crouches beside a crumbling wall. The structure looks forgotten, more anthill than monument. But inside the air tells a different story. You step into the dome's shadow, and everything shifts. The noise outside softens. The heat loosens its grip. And the silence, well, the silence feels earned. A small family is picnicking in the shade nearby. Children chase each other around the base of the dome, giggling and slipping in the dust. Their mother smiles and beckons you over. "Cooler here, isn't it?" she says, handing you a fig wrapped in cool leaves. She's right. It's like standing inside a sigh. You settle in the shadow of the yakshal and feel your breath slow. And then something unexpected happens. You fall asleep. It's not a long nap. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe less. But when you wake, the air is still cool, and the world feels gentler. The family is gone, the fig half-eaten. You sit up and smile, a little embarrassed, a little refreshed. This, you realize, is also part of the legacy. These structures weren't just industrial, they were domestic, spiritual even. A place where the desert could be told to hush, even for a moment. Historians rarely talk about this part. The quiet, the comfort. The way generations of people came to these domes, not just for ice, but for calm. Some brought food to chill. Others brought worries to melt. You hear stories later of travelers who marked their journeys by yakshal shadows. Of poets who swore inspiration came easier under these domes. Of lovers who carved initials into the inside wall, knowing their secret would stay cool long after they were gone. One scholar you meet insists the yakshal is a metaphor. It's the idea, she says, that even not in the harshest place, you can preserve something fragile. You return to the dome again that evening, this time alone. You lie flat on your back and stare up at the inner curve of the cone. It's smooth, infinite, almost like a shell. And as the night breeze finds its way through a hidden vent and tickles your cheek, you realize something else. This isn't just architecture. It's a lullaby in mud and lime. You smile and stay a while longer. The sun has barely risen, but the market is already alive. This time your path winds behind the stalls, past clay ovens and fig crates, toward a commotion near the back gate. A group of children are gathered around something they part as you approach, revealing a dripping basket, a trail of wet footprints, and one very proud teenager holding a stolen piece of ice. It's about the size of a mango slick and shrinking fast. The boy lifts it like a trophy. From the yakshal, he announces, "Fresh." There's a scramble of hands, a chorus of giggles. Someone yells, "Run!" And they scatter the piece of ice passed from one to another like a baton in a race against evaporation. You can't help but laugh. There's something ancient and joyful about the scene, like the world's most inefficient heist performed for no reason other than delight. One of the kids slows long enough to tell you that they sneak in early before the merchant arrives through a crack in the plaster wall. "It's tradition," he says. "My uncle used to do it. My grandfather, too. You ask if they ever get caught." He shrugs. Sometimes. But if you share, no one's mad. You follow the group into a courtyard where the ice is split onto plates. Over it, someone drizzles molasses from a tin flask. Another sprinkles dried lime zest. They eat quickly, fingers sticky ice hissing as it dies. Historians wouldn't bother recording this. No scholar will debate the flavors of stolen ice. But in its own way, this moment says everything about value tradition and how even luxury can become a playground. You sit on a low wall as they finish. A girl taps your knee and offers the last sliver half melted and stuck to her palm. You tea it, let it dissolve on your tongue, and it tastes like childhood. Cold, fleeting, and kind of magical. Later, a merchant appears and inspects the doorframe. He sees the wet prints, the smear of molasses on the wall. He sighs, rolls his eyes, and smiles. Every year he mutters, then goes back to stacking baskets. And for the rest of the morning, the city hums along, unaware that beneath its order, mischief made something a little more memorable. The wind has shifted. You feel it the moment you step out into the courtyard, less gentle, more restless. People mutter about odd seasons, strange crops, nights that don't cool the way they used to. Even the yakshal keepers are uneasy. You make your way to the outskirts of the city where elders sit beneath a cedar tree, staring out at the mountains. One gestures for you to sit. "The world is changing," he says. Even the cold remembers less. He's talking about climate. Not in the modern, data-driven sense, but through memory, through ritual. He tells you how when he was young, the ice pools froze more quickly. The mountain paths were more reliable. The ice lasted longer. Now, some years, the harvest barely covers what's needed for temples and kitchens. You visit an abandoned yakshal nearby. Cracks stretch along its base, and the air inside feels tepid. The dome, once cool and commanding, now seems to sag. A thin trickle of water runs down one side. It's still beautiful, but tired. Historians recognize this too. Climate fluctuations have always reshaped civilizations. Some even argue that Persia's ice infrastructure was built during, or because of a particularly cool era. And as those patterns shifted, so too did storage habits, trade routes, even religious practices. In hot years, festivals moved. In dry years, tax records mention ice shortages. You flip through an old merchant's journal. Snow arrived late. Melted early. God's not pleased. You smile, but it's a melancholy one. You pass through villages that used to be ice waypoints, now mostly forgotten. A woman shows you a cracked clay mold that once held syrup for freezing. "We still try," she says, "but it's not the same." You ask if they'll abandon the yakshal. She shakes her head. "We keep it." For the memory, there's beauty in that. Even as the desert warms, as the systems struggle, the tradition persists. People still chill drinks in soaked cloth. Children still sneak ice. Bakers still whisper recipes that begin with, "If the frost is good this year." You climb a low ridge and look back at the city. From here, you can spot the yakshals, their domes glowing faintly in the sunset. They're fewer than before, but still standing. Maybe they'll adapt. Maybe they'll fade. But for now, they endure. Not just as relics, but as reminders. Of coolness in the heat. Of stillness in the storm. The library smells like parchment and patience. You find yourself at a narrow desk surrounded by towering scrolls and stone tablets that lean just slightly as though whispering among themselves. You're here for a different kind of heat debate. A historian greets you with a smirk and a fan. "So you've come for the ice wars," she says. You raise an eyebrow. She points to a cluster of shelves. Academic ones. "Don't worry. No one's been stabbed in decades." You're ushered into a small chamber lined with annotated blueprints and wildly contradictory footnotes. This is where modern scholars try to piece together the Yakchal puzzle, when they were invented, how they were built, what they were really used for, and whether we've been romanticizing them a little too much. Some argue that Yakshals date back to the Achaemenid Empire, maybe earlier. Others believe the structures we associate with ice were originally designed for storing grain or water, and that their icy fame came later with modifications. There's even a theory that some were built primarily for ceremonial purposes. Cooling, yes, but also contemplation. A chalkboard lists conflicting data. One set of thermal readings from a restored dome in Yazd. One archaeological report from Kerman, and a poetic fragment about snow trapped in clay dreams. Scholarly rigor meet Persian verse. You overhear two researchers arguing over airflow mechanics. One insists the venting system was strictly downward to trap evaporative coolness. The other claims a dual draft mechanism pulled hot air upward through hidden flues. A third leans in and mutters, "They probably just guessed and got lucky." You chuckle, but the truth is more complicated. Evidence suggests extraordinary trial and error. Builders adjusted angles over centuries. Some Yakchals worked brilliantly. Others flopped and collapsed under their own weight. One young student shows you a digital model of a Yakchal rendered in 3D software. "We can't recreate it exactly," she says, "because we don't fully understand the clay mixture. It's part science, part folklore. That blend of data and myth structure and soul is what makes these arguments so oddly gentle. Nobody wants to win. They want to understand. Every hypothesis feels like a love letter to ancient cleverness. Before you leave, someone hands you a book titled When the Desert Cooled. It's heavy, hand-stitched. The dedication reads, "To the ones who asked how, and the ones who never stopped asking." As you step out into the warm afternoon, you look back at the library. Its stone walls, its wind catchers, its shaded halls. Maybe it's a kind of Yakshal, too. Not for ice, for ideas. And just like the real thing, it's built to outlast the heat. The bazaar is especially lively today, voices bouncing off tiled domes, and incense curling like warm thoughts. You're here not just for spices or silk, but for a rumor, a tantalizing theory that Persian cooling tech may have traveled far beyond its homeland. You duck into a bookshop where an excitable merchant waves a scroll like a captured bird. Egyptians had mud brick, he says, but Persians taught them ice. It's not a scholarly consensus, but it's one of many theories floating through the old city. The idea is simple, that the ingenuity of the Yakchal didn't stay put. Traders, diplomats, even exiles may have carried the concepts, mud layering, wind catchers, thermal traps to Egypt, Mesopotamia, or even further west. You find a dusty corner of the shop stacked with half-translated texts, some written in Old Persian, others in Aramaic or Greek. One scroll references cool chambers beneath the dunes. Another speaks of water jars that do not warm even in noon's teeth. Historians remain divided. Some see the similarities between Persian and later Roman or Egyptian cooling methods as proof of shared knowledge. Others claim it's coincidence or parallel invention. After all, hot places breed cool ideas. You trace a merchant route etched into a painted map. From Susa to Babylon, then onward to the Nile. The path is dotted with trade towns, temples, and water stations. Could one of those dots have hosted a prototype Yakshal? Maybe. Maybe not. But you do spot something real, a carved relief from the 4th century BCE found in Anatolia, showing a cone-shaped structure with men carrying baskets inside. The caption is vague, the resemblance uncanny. One scholar you meet believes the idea of preserved cold inspired not just architecture, but philosophy. To trap something fleeting, she says, is to learn patience. Another thinks it may have influenced early Islamic garden design, where coolness was a metaphor for paradise. As you leave the shop, you notice a coin seller polishing a silver drachma. He nods toward a tiny engraving, what looks like a fan-shaped vent etched above a dome, that he says is Persian. You walk away wondering if he's right or just playing to your curiosity. Either way, it's clear ideas travel. Some on camelback, some in verse, some hidden in bricks and cooling winds. And maybe, just maybe, a Yakshal isn't just Persian anymore. It's global. Invisible, perhaps, but still standing somewhere in the DNA of every shaded arch and whispering hallway that tries to soften summer's edge. The sun hangs like a bronze coin above you as you step into the workshop of an old artisan, part mason, part philosopher, all storyteller. He doesn't look up as you enter, just gestures toward a pile of bricks and says, "You want to understand it? Stack those without thinking." You try. They collapse. He smiles. "Now think, but not too much. You're here to understand the engineering of the Yakshal, not just its outer form, but its inner elegance. Geometry, thermodynamics, the subtle magic that turns earth and air into refrigeration." He hands you a flat slate and draws with charcoal a cone, then a spiral within it. Heat rises. Cold settles. But shape is what makes that mean something. He draws another shape, a dome, a cube. Only one keeps the chill long enough. You begin to see the genius. The inverted cone isn't just about storage. It's about directing airflow, minimizing surface exposure, and stabilizing internal temperature. The base is often sunk below ground level, surrounded by insulating earth. The walls, sometimes nearly 2 meters thick. You kneel by a small model and test it yourself. A candle near the top flickers the flame pulling upward. A cloth dipped in water and hung inside cools quickly. It's simple physics, but dressed in clay. Historians suggest these principles were known even if not written. Ancient builders may not have used modern formulas, but they understood gradient flow and radiant transfer. They felt their science in the bones of the building. You sketch your own version. The artisan glances over and nods. "Too square," he says. "Air doesn't like corners." He shows you the subtle tapering at the base, the fluting of the walls, the slope of the vent. Each Yakshal teaches you, if you listen. One of his apprentices runs in holding a basket of herbs. They plan to test evaporation rates using different moisture sources. "Mint cools better than rose," she says, "but rose smells braver." You spend the afternoon in experiments, weighing, timing, observing. Your notes are messy, your data inconsistent, but your wonder is pure. You're building not just a model, but an appreciation for how ancient wisdom solved a problem we now throw electricity at. And by dusk, as the dome glows in soft amber light, you realize this is engineering that breathes. Quiet, modest, but still working after centuries. The artisan places a single brick in your hand. "Keep it," he says, "in case you ever forget that geometry has a temperature." You leave with the brick tucked under your arm, and a mind spinning with angles, airflow, and the poetry of physics. You're back in the city one last time, standing quietly beneath the tallest Yakshal, its curve dark against the lavender sky. A breeze catches your sleeve. It's cool, familiar, like the echo of a dream you've visited more than once. A small gathering is forming for the evening ritual, an offering of fruit mint and quiet gratitude to the season. Someone places a clay bowl at the base of the dome, filled with water that's already begun to bead with condensation. Children line up with candles. Elders sit cross-legged nearby, humming a lullaby older than ink. You step into the shadow once more, feeling the air shift, as it always does. The interior is darker than you remember, but softer. You sit beside the inner wall, running your fingers over the layers of plaster, each one holding memory. You think of the builders, the mathematicians, the servants hauling ice through darkness, of the feasts, the sneaky children, the whispered arguments over whether rose syrup is better with or without cardamom. Outside the dome seems to hum not from within, but from everything around it. The past, the air, the silence. You lie back, breath slowing, thoughts wandering. It's time to let the day slip. The air inside the yakshal is still. Not cold now, but gentle. Even the wind has stopped trying to speak. You let the weight of centuries settle into the floor beneath your spine, letting the last scents of mint and clay fade into the quiet. The desert, once blistering and loud, is now a hush wrapped in dusk. And the dome around you, this ancient, impossible creation, is not just a machine. It's a pause, a shelter of patience, a memory of coolness in the warm hands of time. So, breathe easy and rest. The ice will keep until morning. End of script. Sweet dreams.